What's up, everyone? You're listening to the Grepcast from TSP LLC, bringing you a weekly look into the world of technology and technology-adjacent ephemera. My name is Adam Fisk, and today we are joined by Kelly Ford.
Hello.
And Michael O.
Hello, and I'd just like to state for the record, I'm ashamed of being from Alabama, at least for today.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. That was my morning of listening to NPR and just being like, all right, cool. Mm-hmm. This is going to be the flavor of the day.
Yep. So let's bring it upbeat.
Yeah.
That's what
Grepcast
is here for.
Just a little bit. This is actually a follow-up to a previous episode where we talked about facial recognition, and specifically about facial recognition being used when maybe we didn't necessarily know we were opting in. The article came out recently from actually NBC News. This article in particular was written by Olivia Salon and Cyrus Farivar, with the headline of "Millions of people uploaded photos to the Ever app. Then the company used them to develop facial recognition tools."
Of course they did.
So this is like when we're mapping out our episode today, it's like we're on a specific train, but in this case, this app Ever, which for those who don't know what it is, I personally didn't. It is a free photo app. Upload your stuff, very Google Photos like, iCloud Photos adjacent. But in this case, it's just a photos app. But buried in their privacy policy, they spun off and created a brand new company called Ever AI, where they are just mining all of your photos to train their algorithms. And understandably, people got a little frustrated and felt maybe a bit betrayed by this company.
Yeah, and also not just, to train their facial recognition system, but then to sell that technology to private companies, specifically law enforcement and the military. So what could go wrong? I ask. What?
Nothing at all.
This is also, just to clarify, a crazy train this week.
Yeah, this week we're starting with independent companies just mining your garbage, and that train don't stop.
It really doesn't.
No. But, to our point on earlier Grepcast, when you get something for free,
it
free
ain't
apps, free services, it ain't free. Unless it's from Google, then it might be free, and it might be okay.
I feel like we're waiting. Just waiting.
I know, we're waiting. But yeah, third party, random company, no.
Mm-hmm. No.
But to that point of it's just waiting, in this article, it focused in that Ever was a free photos app for for a couple of years, up until about 2.5 years ago, where he and other company leaders, quote, realized that a free photo app with some small paid premium features, quote, wasn't going to be a venture scale business. So it's like, hey, gang, we're not making enough money to get that VC investment. So let's spin off and create a AI company. Instead of pivot to video, it's pivot to data mining.
Data mining. Facial recognition.
I talked to Sarah.
Brilliant idea.
I talked to Sarah about this morning, the whole data mining thing, and she said she read somewhere that people are calling it the fourth industrial revolution, where everybody's just rushing in and doing the thing with data mining, and then it's the after effect of, oh no, we accidentally data mined your privacy and rights away. So sorry.
Right. And then it's just like, oops.
But it's in the terms and conditions, guys. God, they told you.
They told you only. So this is where I got real weirded out and frustrated. Ever only put this clause, I guess, in the privacy policy after NBC News reached out to the company in April. So it wasn't even public until they got caught, and then they added an oblique line essentially saying, hey, we're going to use this for stuff.
Therefore, it's your fault that we use you.
Right. It is
stuff.
Always our fault.
Oh, for sure.
The good news is we have some people doing stuff about this. Originally, this was an article about Somerville, where I personally live. moving to ban facial recognition software surveillance in this case. So they're going out. The lead sponsor of this measure is Counselor Ben Ewan Campen, who really just said, like, hey, this probably definitely has real use. It can be helpful in emergencies. It could be helpful in terrorism cases. But in this article, the quote is, he doesn't think that the technology is ready, nor has the public considered its full implications. So very, very much back to this ever.com or ever photo app thing. It's like we are blindly saying yes to things that we just don't really understand the full implications and what that does. What happens when this fourth industrial revolution hits its breaking point. And to the points that we were talking about a few weeks ago, hey, our face isn't our property anymore. It is the property of everything else because we signed it away once when we were trying to use Google Photos.
Right. And it's like, I think it's Massachusetts Senator Cynthia Cream. She's also sponsoring a moratorium bill at the state level. And, she kind of goes on to say it's not that this is bad technology or it can't be used for good, but it's just not developed yet. There's just not enough there to know if it's going to be used effectively or, more importantly, ethically.
Yeah, I mean, I find this interesting because clearly, I mean, as we've talked about it, the privacy implications and the misuse of data, even intentional or not, it's just so rife for all of these issues. But I wonder actually what the everyday consumer thinks about it. Like, because the way that companies are reacting to it. So I was reading in the state of Illinois has a similar moratorium that's already in place. And basically Nest, the company that makes those smart thermostats and smart cameras, doesn't sell some of their products that do facial recognition in the state of Illinois. So certain products aren't available. And essentially that's the way the manufacturers are dealing with this. They're not actually dealing with the crux of the issue, which is, well, let's make facial recognition better. Let's address these sort of issues around, the minorities that are being, sort of pushed aside because the facial recognition doesn't work as well for them as it does for white males, etc. They're just saying we're not going to sell the products. And I wonder if there's kind of this element of, well, they're trying to react, the companies that are making this stuff are trying to get people to say, hey, look, you can't buy these products, so this bill is bad for you because it's eliminating choice that other people in other states have for you. I wonder how educated, that the general public is about, these issues.
I think you know our response, right?
Yeah, they ain't.
I know.
But
which is why Grebcast exists.
Right.
We're
Bringing
trying.
you that knowledge.
Yeah.
We're giving it to you.
I think one of the thing that is hard to address is the idea of consent. So if I consent that I'm cool with my pictures being utilized for facial recognition research and algorithms or whatever, who's to say that people that I take pictures of also consent to this?
Right.
There
Exactly.
was a quote in this NBC News of a user of Ever who was like, hey, it's super creepy. I have pictures of my kids in here. I have pictures of friends, and they have and probably will never consent to this because they're not going to even get the choice.
Yeah.
Like, unless we now create a official database of faces
Right.
that then say, hey, you know what? I don't want to be in there.
Maybe
Hey,
that's
guess
what
what?
Google has.
Yeah,
Right.
that's what Homeland Security already has. So there we go.
Yeah.
It's for permission.
I think it goes back to like the JetBlue facial recognition thing, right? So some people were like, oh yeah, this is super convenient because it doesn't affect them personally because I'm guessing, going out on a limb, the people who are really fine with this are white, cisgender, probably heterosexual. So they're not in marginalized groups, and they're not the people who have been targeted by this type of technology yet.
Well, I mean, this has come up even in dinner conversation. I was at a barbecue with somebody that was saying that they went over to somebody's house and that person informed them, that they have cameras in the house for various reasons. And I think we've talked about this Airbnb and all this kind of stuff. But, as this technology becomes more prevalent, that idea of consent sort of disappears. I mean, that's a minority fringe case. How many houses have you had dinner in that does have a Nest camera, that does have some sort of camera that, is feeding stuff to the cloud? Maybe it's only 1 or 2% of the households, in America that have this technology, but it's growing, and it's growing very quickly. I mean, if Alexa and any of these technologies is any indication, in 5 or 10 years, in certain parts of the American demographic, you're gonna have this stuff just being prevalent. And yeah, will you have to sort of ask when you walk into somebody's house, do you have a camera? Will there be forms to fill out? Of course not. I mean, it's just it'll just be part of everyday stuff. So I think it's really interesting that the cities and states are taking this up as something to regulate, essentially.
Yeah. Well, hot off the presses, as of yesterday, San Francisco was the first city to ban the use of facial recognition technology by police and other agencies. So it started like San Francisco, like one of the most tech-forward cities, is now saying, nope, you can't do this. So we'll see what happens. Unfortunately, I think for many cities and states, utilizing San Francisco as precedent may not be the easiest one. As there are very specific feelings about San Francisco and the things they do, but hey, it's got to start somewhere, right?
And I think it will correlate strongly with sanctuary cities. So,
yeah. Somerville, San Francisco. So I guess, yeah, that's a super great point. Yeah, like
watch what happens.
Next?
Grepcast.
I know.
Grepcast watch. Sanctuary.
Yeah. The next episode is live.
So following our theme of things happening, so action, reaction, we have 2 calls to break it up. The first call, in this case, coming from the Supreme Court, allowing antitrust lawsuits to be brought against Apple. This is one that, full disclosure, when I heard that antitrust was coming, I was like, all right, whatever. Cool, I guess. I don't understand what the founding is. But in this case, I was trying to be an educated consumer of news. So I read the New York Times article, this time written by Adam Liptak and Jack Nikas. This is really focused in app stores. And in this case, from my understanding, which I'll use that caveat, this is my understanding of it, is the idea that is being brought in this class action lawsuit is that since Apple is controlling the App Store, they make the rules, they're able to say yes or no to any application that's in there. They're essentially controlling costs. They're controlling how much an individual business or developer can actually make off of an application, which in this case is their sticking point. This is the issue with Apple.
Yeah, so like the argument here is that if you're being blocked by Apple to, let's say, if you have an app that does parental controls, and then Apple recently came out with parental controls sort of built in, to, iOS. And then they basically started telling people that had apps to do this stuff, nope, sorry, you're interfering with core operating system stuff, which some people have argued, well, they just stole all of our best ideas, implemented it, and now they're putting us out of business. And so that's, that seems at the surface certainly like a monopolistic kind of practice. It also could just be capitalism. I mean, let's be frank, there's sort of a fine line between the two.
Yeah, and in this case, as of 2017, Apple has generated more than $26 billion in payments to developers. That does not take into account, I think, the $50 billion that they're making off of the developers, because Apple got to get a cut of that. But it's a really, really great point of, in this case, these developers who created the original parental control applications, the original time monitoring, screen monitoring stuff, now are being like, hey, you can't exist because privacy reasons. So is the privacy reason, hey, we don't want you making money when we want to be the sole owner of this?
Of course.
Sounds right.
I get it. But in the majority opinion from the Supreme Court, the quote in there comes to that the allegations boil to one straightforward claim that Apple exercises monopoly power in the retail market for the sale of apps and has unlawfully used its monopoly power to force iPhone owners to pay Apple higher than the competitive prices for apps. This is all that walled garden thing that is really good for Apple in that, hey, there's only one app store. You're not going to download an app that is willfully malware or just bad because, no, there's a vetting process.
Right.
But by nature of that, there's no secondary market that can compete.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this one sort of translates into actual litigation or court cases, because there is so much in this. I mean, basically, Apple has created this entire ecosystem. It's more than an ecosystem. It's an economy. The economy of the developer, the economy of the in-app purchase is generating huge amounts of income and money. But more importantly, it's generating, an occupation. It's a new occupation. If you go back 10, 15 years, people wouldn't be able to make money in the way they do off of games, off of apps, all of these types of things. So, one could really argue they haven't had such a beneficial kind of effect on certain aspects of the technology society. Clearly there's people that have lost in that. But, and then they're sort of saying, well, this is kind of, Apple's way of regulating it. They're going to argue that the walled garden is part of a security, aspect. And I think it's hard to argue with that. In that it's clear that the walled garden does create more secure apps, even though WhatsApp got hacked and whatever this week, but
hey,
still,
spoilers.
Oh, sorry. sorry. And then the person died in Avengers Endgame. No. So, it really feels like that you really have to consider a whole big kind of economic, evaluation of all of this. This is not monopoly as in the railroads of the early 1900s. This is a completely different, world we're dealing with. And I personally have no idea how you would evaluate that from a legal perspective.
Now, I ain't no big city lawyer, but I don't know. I just really wanted to say that.
I like that.
It's
good.
This entire thing is bananas. I understand the idea of not having competition because without competition, there's no growth. People get complacent. We have corporations that now own everything.
Right.
So on that note,
hey Disney.
Hey, fate. Well, yeah. Oh my God.
Sorry, we said it was a crazy train.
Yeah, Disney now. Hey, spoiler alert for everybody. Disney owns all media, so good luck. I guess anything. We can devote an entire episode talking about how the streaming wars are now in full tilt, but in this case, there was an op-ed that was posted also to the New York Times by Chris Hughes, which I will admit, didn't know the name, but it's the co-founder of Facebook, arguing that it is, quote, time to break up Facebook, which I think is a pretty gargantuan task.
Sounds valid, though.
Not a bad thing. Yeah. So in this article, he goes to, even just at the drop, he's talking specifically about Mark Zuckerberg in this case and what his personal influence is. Not necessarily Facebook, but Mark Zuckerberg specifically. And he goes to the point of really pointing at the elephant in the room that Mark Zuckerberg as a person controls 3 core communication platforms for the entire world. Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram. The 3 things that billions of people use every day. And because Mark Zuckerberg controls, 60% of all voting in the corporation, it is his influence. This article is long. It is a heavy piece. Full disclosure, I didn't get through the full thing. I got the gist. I felt it. I understood it. I agreed with it intrinsically. But much like Apple, there is no competition. Nobody can create the next Facebook because, to your point, Mike, Facebook's main thing is it's okay to steal. If you see a good idea, let's either buy it or copy it. So there's no incentive for a new company to make the new Facebook that is different, that is going to get that investment to become the new big thing. Because, hey, worst case scenario, Facebook steals whatever you're trying to do, and brings it into their platforms. Or best case scenario for the actual developers, they just buy you and do it anyways.
It would be hard for so many people to quit Facebook. So that he had mentioned that as well, and that was kind of the rallying cry, especially after Cambridge Analytica. And some people stopped, but then it was almost like a loneliness factor, and people got right back on. And it was interesting that he also noted it. He made reference to AT&T and how they had a monopoly, and it's a communication platform, and so it's kind of in this world now where it's kind of like, well, you wouldn't give up your phone, you wouldn't necessarily give up your social communication. So there is no other there's not another app that is doing what Facebook is doing. And
or like even the Facebook family.
Yeah. Because because it's Instagram, it's like, screw you, Facebook. Well, you're still on Instagram. I mean, you could, but I mean, we have advanced to the point where, much like I wouldn't get rid of my phone if it were the AT&T monopoly. I wouldn't want to get rid of all my social communication, though I do hate Facebook. But as an author, I kind of need it. It's one of those things that it is very hard to get off of there and be at least an author. And I'm sure for small businesses, it's the same thing. But also this idea that, when they did have competition, it urged them on to innovate and be more creative because they had competition from Friendster, which I totally forgot was even a thing. But I was definitely on there.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Right?
Friendster, MySpace.
Right. Twitter, Tumblr,
there was something to move them forward.
Right. So it forced them into doing better interfaces, having a newsfeed, though we've seen how wrong that can go, but then also using real identities, because real identities weren't really used before then. So, as he said, we pay for Facebook with our data and it doesn't come cheap, and we also pay for it with a lack of innovation.
Yeah. I mean, what's interesting is when you put both of these articles together, Apple, I mean, I'm historically a big Apple fan, and I'm trying to kind of separate myself from that in this evaluation. But at least with Apple iOS and the App Store and all these things that people and developers are arguing about, there is an alternative, a very clear alternative. And it's a pretty 50-50 one, in terms of Android, Google Play. A lot of developers are still on, developing for both platforms, but they both have slightly different economies as a developer, slightly different options and features. And you know what? If you're unhappy with the iOS world, well, you can still serve 50% of the world in the Google world if you want to develop for that. Facebook, I mean, there's a couple of things which really make me sort of feel like, Facebook first, right? Before Apple, because it is, it is this single gargantuan platform. They do own and have made some very great strategic acquisitions so that they own these major communications channels. I'm off of Facebook myself, but I'm on Instagram. So, I mean, Zuckerberg's still getting ad revenue. That's right. And the singular control that Zuckerberg has, which you can't argue is the same in Apple, it just feels... I mean, I just loved his response. Zuckerberg's response to this was sort of like, quote, "It's not going to help," unquote.
Right.
It's and I don't know if that's a denial of any of the things. It's just like, it doesn't matter. It's a force of its own to be reckoned with. It doesn't matter that I'm still in charge or not.
Yeah.
I will say, this is a really tough topic, and because it's a force unto its own. Facebook is already consumed everything, not only from startups that could be doing stuff. They own VR companies, they own Instagram, they own WhatsApp. They're in every pie, and they're just pulling it ever in to the point that before we started recording, I was trying to think of what other social media networks there are. Is there an alternative to what Facebook is doing? and I can't think of anything.
Right.
I know Mastodon exists, but to my understanding, that's more of a Twitter replacement. There's nothing else that I can think of that is, to Kelly, your point of the real name thing. This is me and my like personal brand, not my like screen name brand. Right. There's not that obfuscation.
I don't know that there is one.
No, if there is, they're doing a bad job because we don't know about it.
Well, oh, go ahead.
And probably too, because Facebook is so big, it's hard to get out there. I mean, the idea of, oh, they're so big, there's nothing we can do, which is not true.
It feels like the people that have left Facebook because of their privacy issues, because of Cambridge Analytica, have left. And the people that are left there are people that just use it and to a certain degree don't care. I mean, they're willing to give up the privacy. I mean, they understand there's sort of a trade-off. But, at the end of the day, it's so critical to their everyday lives, to communicating with friends and all that kind of stuff, that they're willing to do it, which is exactly where Facebook wants you.
Right. And sure, they get slapped with a $50 billion fine.
Right.
Cool.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. See you tomorrow when you make all that money back.
But he did reference in this opinion piece that, even an unsuccessful antitrust lawsuit can have positive consequences. And so he referenced in the 1970s, the Justice Department going after IBM for illegally, I'm quoting, illegally maintaining its monopoly on computer sales. So even though it was kind of a stalemate, IBM changed its behavior. And, talking about, there's a Professor Wu who has written, quote, that this policeman at the elbow led IBM to steer clear of anything close to anti-competitive conduct for fear of adding to the case against it. So he's indicating, hey, I think this could be the same thing that could happen with Facebook. So even if it's unsuccessful, there could be other things going on that could help. Who knows, though? I mean, I don't know. I've seen the media charts about, and if you look at product data streams of the 5 companies that own pretty much everything, you do start to think, oh my God, it's too big.
Right.
And then I go back to 6th extinction. We're in the Anthropocene. What do you expect?
Yeah.
Someone help me.
But even back to the idea that these, again, are free services. You don't pay for Instagram. You don't pay for Facebook. I know you pay. I think you pay a little bit for WhatsApp. Do you? Or can you?
No. I mean,
all right. Then you ain't pay for nothing.
Right.
But the average, in this article, in this opinion piece, the average Facebook user spends an hour a day. Instagram users, 53 minutes. While you are definitely seeing ads, you're definitely seeing promoted material, the real benefit is the immense amount of data. Going back to data mining, it's these companies, Facebook and their ad partners, are learning what you like, what you don't, or just honestly how long your eyeball stops on a certain thing. If you don't interact, if you're the pure lurker of Instagram, you don't post anything, you never like anything, but you have an account, you're scrolling. If you stop on an ad and watch it through 10 seconds, 30 seconds, that's all data that is now tying and creating new marketing things. So data mining, we're back to it, and it is everything.
They're data mining us to death.
They're probably even data mining Grepcast.
Honestly, Libsyn, it's between Libsyn. No, but like seriously, we have the Grepcast on Spotify. We have the Grepcast on Apple Podcasts, Pocket Casts, Stitcher. These are all companies where we're not paying them to show the show.
That's true.
But if they know how long they're listening to a podcast that is under the technology sphere, they can show that more. So, yeah. Sorry, gang. It's even us.
We do pay for Libsyn.
Is it too
so
early to drink?
Hosting.
Yeah, for the hosting, but yeah, you're right.
Yeah, but everything, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think it is that late capitalism. It is that what was it? The fourth industrial age.
Yeah.
That we're
like
no longer mining for rare earth metals or deciding that diamonds are worth $1 billion. It's how much our eyeballs are saying, yes, we approve this product. We approve this ideology even. So
Yeah.
we'll see if San Francisco, we'll see if Somerville, hey, makes strides to break up Facebook, you know? It'll never happen. But
It'll never happen.
To our next point. So we talked about what people did and the response therein. We talked about breaking it up. Now we need to remind you, please update your stuff. There have now been, I think now we're up to 4, but in this case, we're only going to focus on 2 major breaches. The first one being Twitter. So this is now just a fun privacy bug where, to our points about ad revenue, Twitter accidentally left a bug where I believe it's called real-time bidding, was active for users who even asked and said, please do not share my location. It was just on. Oops. And that's essentially all they said. They said,
Yeah.
oops, we're very sorry this happened. So cool, gang. But essentially their main thing is, we're not going to talk to you about how long this existed, how many people it affected. It's just saying, no, your location, generalized location in this case, I think it went on to say it's no more specific than the city or zip code that you were in, was sent to a real-time bidding process for showing you location-based ads. So update your app, I guess, and hope for the
best.
Your latest ads from Twitter were a little bit more accurate to you.
Well, and I mean, it just goes to show that, you have intentional sharing of data, and then you have completely unintentional sharing of data. And the fact that companies are collecting this stuff, and I think this is one of the reasons that the facial recognition legislation has legs, is even the companies that intend not to share this data somehow end up doing so. It's not like Twitter doesn't have the engineering resources to figure this out. It's not like they don't have the motivation to do this properly. It's just they screwed it up, and they're focusing on lots of other things other than your privacy. And I think that's really, sort of interesting to see such a big, important tech company make a rookie mistake, but on such a scale that, I mean, presumably it's affecting thousands of users, even though they don't admit it. Maybe hundreds of thousands. Who knows?
I think also it just hasn't sunk into the average consumer how this can affect them personally. And I mean, to be fair, I sometimes am not even sure. It's kind of like I'm floating in this soup of like the normalization of deviance, right? So it's like you have a new disaster every single hour. I mean, we can't even get down to a day yet. So it's just like, oh, here's another thing that happened. It's a big company. It's Twitter. Oh, well.
Yeah.
What, it's kind of like, okay, so how does this affect me? I mean, because I even am kind of grasping with that. What does this mean? What can they do with this data? And it's opaque,
They can tell when you went to Sweet Cheeks and had barbecue, although they could just follow your Instagram.
I know,
find that
I know.
too.
And I'd be fine with that if they'd ask me. But you know what I mean?
Said, please we want to show you more barbecue ads.
We would want your followers to know that you love the following Boston area restaurants. Fine. But what else are you doing with my data? I think that's kind of what I'm waiting for, that big reveal of all the big data and what they're doing with it and how they're mapping it and matching it across platforms.
It's just a parallel universe that they're creating with you in it.
What are they doing with it, Mike? What can they do with this Twitter stuff? Like, break it down for me.
I think to that point of like the breach fatigue, like that, we talked about that way early in the podcast, but it's here. But even for me, reading this article or reading the headline and seeing it, I was like, oh, that doesn't affect me.
Right.
I don't use the Twitter app. I use a different Twitter app. So I just like totally discounted it as like a important idea until I was like, oh, dang, no, I am part of the problem.
Well, I mean, I think we can talk about the next app that needs updating to answer your question, Kelly.
Okay.
So WhatsApp, right, had this massive bug which allowed you in WhatsApp on Android or iOS to essentially, for a hacker, and admittedly from the information that's available, a state level hacker, I mean, this like requires certain high level tools to insert malware onto your phone, right? And it was detected because of a particular British lawyer that was involved with a lot of sensitive cases and whatnot, sort of bringing this to attention of a nonprofit who sort of flagged this issue. And then eventually WhatsApp said, hey, yeah, you know what? This is a vulnerability that can allow across platforms to have this spyware, which could listen in and all this kind of stuff. And so, look, I mean, I don't think at the end of the day, Kelly, it's like you've got things to worry about, whether or not you're at the barbecue joint or not at a given time may not necessarily be of interest to, the hackers in North Korea. But I think it should. Clearly it should. I mean, it's good barbecue. I mean, they should know that, right?
Yes.
I haven't personally tasted it, so
I know.
next time.
We're targeting July, hackers.
Right. Yeah.
We'll have a
exactly.
podcast that is just a barbecue
Barbecue.
show.
TSP will visit Sweet Cheeks in July.
Yeah. But I think it's this idea that all of these breadcrumbs are out there, right? And they're not particularly well protected. And if there is a reason for somebody to want to find you, to want to understand where you are, there's now a multitude of different places where that information can be. Some of it could be legitimate, something that somebody could extract in a court case, and simply sort of say, oh, well, I was able to prove that this person's here or not. And yeah, we'd all like to think that the breadcrumbs will sort of show truth, but at the same time, the data can be skewed in lots of different ways so that it shows, a story which isn't necessarily the truth. And I think particularly for people in very sensitive worlds, like this British lawyer, I mean, their life is at stake.
Yeah.
I mean, and lots of other livelihoods are at stake because of this bug.
Well, it reminds me of what you were saying, Mike, too, even at a smaller scale, talking about how the data is used and interpreted. It reminded me of the tough student at the veterinary school and how even the data was skewed. Even the data showing that she was where she said she was. And they're like, nah.
Right. Yeah. Or it just gives them another reason to sort of dig over and, flip over another rock and come up with another misinterpretation of the data. And I think that's the kind of stuff where it's like, all of these breadcrumbs are out there, and especially if you're dealing with people that aren't going through the court systems, that are sort of digging it up behind the scenes, and for whatever reason. And I think today it is the lawyers and the people like doing human rights stuff that are targeted, but in 5 or 10 years when this data is everywhere, then it could literally be, a $500 gun for hire. Let me dig up something on somebody that you can get them into jail because I can just attach all this data, which is completely verifiable, and, put them in at the scene of a crime or something like that. I mean, who knows?
Or even kidnapping.
Yeah.
In closing, the WhatsApp statement was really helpful to be just like, what do we do with all this information? Twitter keeps on getting hacked. WhatsApp has vulnerabilities. They actually gave clear instruction, which is amazing. They said, please update to the latest version of the app. But most surprisingly, they said, as well as keep your mobile operating systems up to date. So if you're listening and you're like, oh man, now everything is broken and ruined forever, at least what you can do is, it is the most annoying thing to do, but the most important, open the App Store, update your apps, make sure they're on automatic updates. And when you get that annoying prompt from Apple that says, hey, there's a new security update, please do it, just do it.
Okay. Adam.
Yes. And go looking for it too. Go into settings, go into, about, and click on software update, because that's, it might take Apple a day or two to give you that notice. There's no reason why not to go looking for it. Sorry, it's under general.
Yeah, they may change an app, icon, news plus, all these things, but hey, at least WhatsApp won't be able to spy on your phone calls anymore. The little things we do. But that is the time that we have on this episode of the Grepcast. Thanks again for listening to us. If you want to keep up with what we're doing, check out our websites, tsp.me and tsp.space. And if you want to add into Facebook's monopoly, check us out on Instagram at TSPLLC. I will bring a plug this week and an early sneak peek. A really interesting book that I just bought yesterday from our local bookstore. It is called Ghost Work. It is written by an anthropologist, Mary L. Gray, and computer scientist, Siddharth Suri, talking about how AI and the AI-related industries are creating a new global underclass focused on the people that actually make these algorithms work. So I'm really excited to finish this and talk about it on an upcoming episode. Kelly, what about you?
Yeah, so The Handmaid's Tale is coming out on June 5th, season 3.
Oh, in real life, though.
Yeah. I mean, The Handmaid's Tale in real life is already here, but the fictionalized version...
Spoilers.
Coming out on Hulu, now owned by Disney. Season 3, June 5th.
How about you, Mike?
Let's see. Well, plugs. I am going to plug a TV show as well, Good Omens, which stars David Tennant, coming out on Amazon very soon. My wife has been reading the book, and I've been following along, and we're looking forward to the TV show.
Nice. All hail our corporate overlords, Amazon and Disney, bringing you the next look of TV.
Hey, it's all about escapism at this point.
I mean, you got it.
I feel it.
Yeah.
And me, I'm just escaping into labor. So, oops, I goofed it. But until we talk to you again, stay cool.
Bye.
See ya.